Tomamos asiento, perdonad. Sí. Bueno, sí. Bueno, parece que cuesta volver al refugio. Vamos a volver al refugio, pero lo vamos a hacer con la mirada puesta en el exterior. Porque lo que vamos a hacer ahora en esta sesión es justamente reflexionar, pensar en la ciudad, no solo como espacio que habitamos, sino como organismo vivo que de alguna manera moldea cómo convivimos, que es realmente lo más interesante, ¿no? La sesión lleva por título Ciudad sostenible y pensada, porque creemos que imaginar el futuro también, de alguna manera, es diseñar el presente. La va a conducir la arquitecta Izaskun Chinchilla. Gracias.
I was just testing if you were clapping so that you were listening and you were already here, no, after the break. Okay, we have a round table that is going to be amazing. I think my job today is very, very easy because we have three wonderful guests, starting from your left. We have Charles Laundrie, that is an amazing thinker. He's understanding the city and creativity in a really exceptional way. We have Helen Marriage, directing and CEO from Artichoke, which is making possible all short of amazing and surprising art and cultural interventions in the street, in the public spaces, in the squares that we all share. And we have Juan Tur, that has been responsible of bringing part of the expertise and the design work from West 8, one of the most important landscape and public space designers from Europe, to Madrid and to some of the most remarkable public spaces that has been built in Madrid lately. The structure that we are going to follow is quite open, and we are expecting a bit of your participation at the end of the session. I always like to say this from the beginning so that we have very good questions and we are expecting to have a real dialogue with you. The three of them are going to intervene in a short 10 minutes, 9 to 10 minutes presentation, each of them starting on the left to the right. Then I'm going to try to create some links, bonds, and interchange so that we can arrange a dialogue among the three of them. And then at the end, we will have 15 minutes in which we will be very happy to discuss all the contents and have this open dialogue with you guys. So please take your beautiful notes, think about your own expertise, your own background, your own expectations, because this is, again, an open dialogue with the local audience, okay? So, Charles, if you are so kind.
Well, they're so kind to putting on this event, Publica 25. It's pretty good to me. Anyway, I was asked to talk about sustainable and thoughtful cities, and I sort of said, I've had enough of sustainable. I want to start with thoughtful. And obviously there's a big context of why we need to be thoughtful. I mean, you could say it's 1 minute to midnight. I'm not sure if that's true, but it could be in terms of the urgency. And the fragility we all know that exists in the world is immense. I don't need to go into detail. And of course, the earth is hurting. You know, it's all very beautiful, but it is hurting. It's pained, its stomach is hurting, its heart is hurting, many things are hurting. And we also know that our footprint is vast, perhaps too much, and we know perhaps that we need to put that into the cemetery, fossil fuels, because there are obviously other alternatives. And artist friend of mine where I live, he always in lockdown put words down in the corona period, and he put luck down, and I thought, isn't it interesting? Luck down, but we never actually really responded. Everything went back to the old normal. And so we all know the issues is what I'm really trying to say. So lots of places all around the world are looking at what shall we do, how shall we do it, but they face a brick wall. There seems to be things that are stopping progress. But there is obviously here and there a breakthrough. And think of the city, I think, as if it was a human being. And think of that thing as a thoughtful person. So what would we want from a thoughtful person? So I think a city would become self-sustaining if they considered everybody and everything, if they felt deeply and responded and planned and acted in that way, and if they were emotionally intelligent. So if the city were emotionally intelligent, we could then tap into this yearning that I think we have to make better places. So I'm always asking, is the city listening? Is there an ideal city? Is it inspiring? Can you change a city? Are you a city maker? And I hope you all are, because that's why you're here. And is your city going up or not? Well, yes, perhaps, or no. Or maybe, I don't know. But this is just an exhibition I was doing. But I think we can make the city go up if we do use our brain in a different way. So the art of creative city making, I think, is actually being thoughtful. So thoughtful places are places where you critically reflect. That's why Publica is so great. We're reflecting critically. We're thinking what's going on. We're actually in the round in some sort of way, collectively having a conversation. A place of anchorage and distinctiveness. A thoughtful place actually knows where it comes from and where it might be going. It doesn't just sort of copy from elsewhere. So you know what distinctive places are like. These just happen to be in India, these places. A thoughtful place blends the old and the new in some sort of way. It's not either or. It could be this library in Rio de Janeiro, which is old but looks new. It could be, I don't know, in Hampshire Park, one of the brilliant ways of using industrial heritage into a playground. It could be a place and should be a place of nourishment and nurture, because we do need that nourishment. You all know that, whether that's food, good food, food that you can touch, that smells, and of course, hospitals, facilities, and so on. But a thoughtful city is a place where you have access, but that means affordability. Now, we all know that prices are going up. I don't need to tell you that. It's very difficult to live in many places, where Singapore is brilliant at that. You might think Singapore is a very controlling place, but it's very good at allowing people to buy homes and so on. It's a place, a thoughtful place, understands connection and communication, whether that's transport systems or finding spaces where we can meet together and bump into each other. A thoughtful place is one that allows and sees diversity as a dividend rather than necessarily only an issue. So you can come as you are, you can be as you are. This is in Penang, where 3 religions, it's a video shop actually, but I thought it was brilliant the way they presented themselves. But it could be intergenerational issues, which we heard earlier. Essentially, getting out of the ghetto. A place of generosity, great places, thoughtful cities. Think of generosity, which is what builds community, because it's beyond the self. It says, how do I, as a group, come together as with an individual? So one is asking oneself, what do we bring? What do I bring to this thoughtful place? And of course, thank God Helen's here, it's a place of active arts and culture in various forms. Well, it doesn't need to be Olafur Eliasson, but it could be lots of things. It could be this German artist who talks about population growth. It could be many things. You know that, of course, because you're at Republica. And then places that are thoughtful, understand that you need opportunities to fulfill your ambition. That could be a building. Juan will talk about buildings or not. He will talk about public space, thank God. And it could be children having opportunities or whatever. And then thoughtful places address the big issues that really matter. They do that. And they look at the world, they think about the world, they think that perhaps there are too many cars, and so on. And thoughtful places know about usefulness and convenience. It needs to be easy to get from A to B. And it's good to just have a meal together easily. A thoughtful place, of course, also occasionally has inspiration. And that could be all sorts of things, allowing you to dream, allowing you to do all sorts of things. It could be a building. I know you don't want to see Bilbao's building, doesn't matter. And a thoughtful place is also a place of serious fun. And Banksy is very good at fun. This is an exhibition in Bristol Museum where the lion is in control rather than the actual person who is the controller. It could be complaining and commenting on overconsumption. So a thoughtful place is digitally savvy. It knows about data sovereignty. It has a handshake between the human being, and it doesn't let AI do everything. It still lets you be in control. So it uses the digital well. And a thoughtful place bends the market to bigger picture purposes. It says, yes, we want the energy, but it's not only about money. There are bigger values than money. And then a thoughtful place has good governance and imaginative governance. It untangles the bureaucracies. It doesn't work in silos. And this is a festival I organize called the Creative Bureaucracy Festival. It tries to say there are interesting people in the public administration too. And then finally, it says to itself, you need moral courage. And then that city, that thoughtful city, I think is sustainable. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Helen Marriage, and it's really unfair for anyone to have to follow Charles. Makes no sense. I'm hoping that if I press this button, a film might start. Yay! So there's no sound on this film. This is just images. Is it working? Yes. Images from Artichoke, my company's practice over the years. And unlike Charles, I'm not a theorist. I'm a producer of very large-scale events. And Artichoke was set up in 2006 to begin to work with artists on huge scale in the public domain. And I just began doing that. I didn't really think about the impacts of what we were doing. But over the years, and it's now been a very long time, I've come to realize that the city is a spiritual place, thoughtful, sustainable maybe, but the spirituality in a city is to do with the people and how they make use of it, how they experience and understand a place which is built almost as a machine to get you to work on time, or a machine to get you shopping, a machine to drive your car, get the bus, whatever. And the purpose of the work that we're engaged in is to interrupt that mechanical process, to interrupt those procedures that we all accept are part of our daily lives, and we're grateful for them. We like the bus to run on time. We like to be able to predict that the shop will open at 10 and close at, well, here I guess it closes at midnight. But we welcome in our hearts the interruption of that machine, the interruption of a world where everything is unpredictable, where children play, where adults are licensed to play like children, and where, in an extraordinary way, artists can liberate our imaginations so that they can invent the world that we would like to live in. I've always thought that artists exist as prophets of a certain future. They tell us the best things about ourselves and how we can exist alongside each other. And I guess our feeling has always been that if you can physically transform a public space, you can forever change the way in which people feel about it, how they remember it, but most importantly, who they shared it with, who they share those moments. So my company exists to liberate the imagination of artists to do the most amazing things that they've ever wanted to do, but to do them in such a way that they touch people who exist in a world that is dedicated to a certain kind of living. And suddenly you find that with these extraordinary projects, the scale at which they operate, the world feels different, and our better selves come out to play. So Artichoke has always felt that the way, how do you negotiate the permissions to do these things? Because our lives are so regulated that when often I turn up in a place and say to a bunch of people, often in uniform, in authority, all you need to do, guys, is to close the roads for 4 days to traffic. And they say, why would we do this? What's it in aid of? And the answer, which I've only come to in recent years, the answer to that question, why would we do this, is actually, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you create these moments of stillness, these moments of tranquility, of contemplation, of excitement, of joy, all the words that rarely get used when you talk to planners or agencies that run the London Underground or the Diplomatic Protection Service. Why wouldn't you stop for a moment, create an opportunity for people to come together in community to share these amazing things? And what you see in these images is people laughing, amazed, really surprised that their city, this place that they understand and love, can be changed into something unrecognizable. And certainly, in our experience, these tens of thousands of people coming together remember forever who they were there with and why it matters. Thank you.
Helen, I'll take this one, thank you. So indeed, I'm I'm from Madrid, I'm from Spain, and I have to talk after this brilliant guest, British, so they have been fantastic. But I work for this office for almost 20 years. That's from the Netherlands, it's called West State. And the fact that it's been from the Netherlands, it's very fundamental for the way that we design public space, landscape design, because the Netherlands is a country that has the uniqueness that it's almost half of the countries below sea level. And we are in a constant struggle, dialogue with the sea, with the rivers, and we are constantly modifying for the last 400 centuries our land by draining it, by creating these canals through these windmills, which are able to create land, to be able to have agriculture, to have an economy, to have life, to have villages. So the fact of land making, it's fundamental in the DNA of the office, and we feel very much, in a way, related to this kind of engineering approach where we can solve problems on how to create land. At the same time, we are very much also in depth with the culture and the identity that this land production has. So we are in depth with a landscape that's produced in relation with the water. and it creates a specific identity that the artists in centuries have been creating, like the poets, the painters. So we feel our work a kind of combination between the engineer who's able to create land and deal with all the complexity of the terrain, and the idea of creating identity through art and through culture. Of course, today we are not we work in the contemporary city, we are working in transforming the complexity of today's city. Sometimes it's renovation, old structures, transforming the obsolete public spaces. Sometimes we have to deal with complex infrastructure projects where we deal with engineering, with tunnels, with cars, complexity. This is from Madrid, Rio, you probably noticed. Or we have to deal with great complex urban regeneration projects on how to bring identity. So we have this concept which is kind of called second nature, is that as we were doing in the Netherlands, so we are creating a new nature that is not the land that is given by nature itself, but we are adding a new nature sometimes in very complex situations. And this nature should prepare, let's say, the conditions for life to happen and to make us be able to reconnect with the native landscapes that we have in our cities, or to reconnect with Lake Ontario in Toronto by the reclamation of the waterfront that was previously controlled by traffic. Or in New York, we are reclaiming, let's say, the relation with the Hudson Bay and with the city, and celebrating the views in the Governor's Island, where we created all these artificial hills made out of recycled material from demolition of the buildings that were there previously. So we see our work as reclaiming land for the pedestrians, for the city, for the neighbors, and establishing new cultures that did not exist. Madrid Rio today is very famous. We have this fantastic 4 kilometers long walking and biking promenade that has to do with a new culture that did not exist maybe in Madrid 15 years ago. That we create green infrastructure, green corridors that connects parks that were previously disconnected. Or we establish new ways of mobility in the waterfronts in the city for everyone. The idea of introducing new ecologies that did not exist in the city is also very fundamental, and even making almost like sanctuaries for ecology. We have this, in Utrecht, we created this huge forest that is surrounded by a long pergola, which is a kind of artistic object that sublimes the idea of vegetation growing through, but not only vegetation, but also it serves place for bats, for insects, for spiders to climb, or these special pergolas that have this design that make nature follow, let's say, they are nature-based design. Culture, as Helen showed in her beautiful images and Charles spoke about, is extremely important. We need to provide spaces that allow culture to get in, that allow people to activate the space and to colonize it. So we need to create spaces which are not over-designed, but they are simple, and where you could really bring artists every summer to make art exhibitions or have fantastic shows like Helen was showing. We did this or we even create art objects, which are, in reality, they are playgrounds. This is a ship in St. Petersburg, a historical ship that it's a boat where children can get into the boat. And children is super important to design cities for children and really create special places that they will remember ever. And light, art, video, all these kind of technologies can also be integrated in the public space to create really innovative and unique public spaces. Currently, we are working in one of the biggest challenges that we have our cities, which is how to create sustainable, but especially resilient, which are totally adapted to climate change, and especially in the case of Madrid. It's a picture of Madrid, of the heat that we suffer every summer. We are currently working on transforming the area in front of Chamartín station, all the railway lines on top, to create this future urban forest. It's named Parque Central in this neighborhood, you know, that will be in the north of Madrid, called Madrid Nuevo Norte. And the idea is really to combine this idea of engineering and technique on how to create a forest on top of a concrete deck, how to bring, again, the pragmatism of the engineering with the poetics to create a very shaded forest with breeze, with fresh breeze, and to have as big as trees as possible to create a shaded place. Studying the microclimate conditions, the wind, the breezes, the direction of the main dominant winds, to create a special object in the center of the park that will create like a swirl where all the paths of the park meet in the center, and we create a kind of ecological refuge or a ecological shelter, a climate shelter, where catches the wind and through passive strategies like ventilation, like evapotranspiration of a green wall in the interior, it's able to diminish the temperature in the interior and create this kind of covered, shaded, fresh square in the center that together with the forest will reduce the temperature in the park. And again, the idea of art, culture, technology, it's included at night with a kind of night landscape where this swirl transforms at night to become a kind of interactive digital envelope that interacts with the city. And probably from here we can say that we try to make nature, technology and art together embedded with the city. Thank you very much.
Okay, I told you it was going to be easy. Okay, I have prepared a bit of a game because I was thinking that could be a bit more, I don't know, joyful, fun, and probably creating more connections among you, no? It's a simple game. It's comparing cities with places and typologies and spaces and buildings that we all know, and try to see if we want to go in this direction or we want to go in the opposite direction. The first one is one that for me has been very fundamental in the Spanish public space culture, that was city as a shopping mall. Comparing a little bit the both of them, no? In Spain, you have places that are supposed to have a very alive urban space, but usually this life that we are expecting to happen in the street is relying on shopping, is relying on trading, is relying on business. No? And when we go into residential areas, public space suddenly go very, very, very little. Those that are from Spain, you remember the adosados neighborhoods, no? Areas of semi-detached houses in which the wallway is 80 centimeters. If you put a tree, you cannot put a buggy. And the public space disappears because the shopping is disappearing, the trading is disappearing. No? Now that we are in front of Amazon and so many digital things, I don't think we can, let's say, trust that trading and shopping is going to bring the animation and the life to our streets. So what is coming after the city as a shopping mall? First question. What is the new role of the commercial aspects of the city?
The two presentations we just heard from Helen and Juan are in that direction because they are both, we used the word fascination earlier, both of them are fascinating. And in both cases, because fascination is more than just, hi, I'm interested. Fascination is, my God, I could fall in love. And so I think this is one of the directions. I think that the difficulty about the shopping mall is you never feel that you're a shaper, maker, co-creator of the place that is evolving. And I think some of the projects you showed, you know, people were having interaction, you encouraged interaction, and I think you do too. So I think actually what will give people an extra level of interest is that they're part of it. I mean, I'm already making the movement as if I'm going towards this place. I've got nothing more to say. Over to Helen and Juan.
It is connected, absolutely.
No, I think one of the nice words that Charles used was the idea of city makers. As it shouldn't be something very complex to be a city maker. Everyone should be a city maker. And the problem is that when cities start to have not too many city makers, but just city buyers or consumers. And that is the challenge that we are facing today, and how to really give the conditions to have city makers in the city. That is the biggest challenge I think that today we have. Sometimes even more sustainability and these things. It's really, because it's something that from urban design, it's not always easy to create. Sometimes you create great places, but then it's totally, the economic trends dominate in some other way that you would not expect, and you end up having gentrification and these kind of things. But it's really fundamental to be able to provide spaces that are really embedded in the local culture, I think, in order to be really, to have the identity of the people, that people feel as their own, extremely important. And they are not just consumers and buying an experience, that it can be in a shop, or it can be a place. So it's very much important that we reinforce, let's say, the local character, the local culture, and the local citizens, let's say, in order to avoid just consuming the city, but that we are really more part of that city. Mm-hmm. And that's very complex. And we are, I think, constantly fighting in this kind of direction. But that, for me, I think that is the main thing. Otherwise, we will end up in just the consuming thing. I mean, you take Gran Via, which was done with a great idea of let's make more pedestrian space. And in the end, what you end up is having more commercial space. How do we deal with this? We go with good intentions, but we end up having other situations.
One of the things I've always said, just in relation to our own work, is that cities are not just about shopping and traffic. But I do recognise that they are that. It is important that people can live their lives and buy their clothes and go to the grocery store and all of that stuff. I think one of the things that's interesting to reflect on historically is how cities grew organically, and the hyper-regulation that so I'm currently, while working on the projects that I do, I'm also working with developers who are building a new city, a new quarter, in the ancient English city of York, which is 1,000 years old or something, and you've seen it a million times because you've watched Harry Potter, and that's what it looks like. So it's a population of 200,000 people and visitors of 8.9 million a year. And they come because it doesn't look like anywhere else. It's not homogeneous. You can't replicate it. It is this extraordinary, organically grown place from the Roman invasion through to now. And we are building a new quarter, which will double the size of the centre of the city. And how you do that thoughtfully and sustainably is a massive challenge. And part of the challenge is that we have regulated, you must experience it all the time, everything about, the width of the road must be consistent, and it must have this size curbs and this much drainage and this, because we know that that's the way to make an efficient and safe place. But it doesn't really allow for those moments of inspiration or the moment of change or transformation that means that the model breaks and you can do it differently. So I think there is something interesting. One of the things I'm always struck by is that the architect of St. Paul's Cathedral in London, which you may all know, it's the big cathedral with the dome, he was an astronomer. He wasn't an architect, because architecture didn't exist. And after the Great Fire of London, this astronomer who was at one of the universities went to see the king and said, let me rebuild London. Let me build it with wide streets so it never catches fire again. And everyone who owned the little buildings said, no. We want to keep our little buildings. Thank you. We'll rebuild it as it was. But you can build the cathedral. And so he was 29, something. He'd built one building before, and then they went, okay, build this. So the professionalization and the regulation, not that I'm against it particularly, but I think you have to recognize that it has a deadening effect. And, you know, there are whole professions of people who curate shopping experiences for you. So they will go into a place and they'll decide which shops are appropriate and how it works. It's just not very natural. And I guess the hope for the future is a return to a more spontaneous and a more organic way in which cities might grow.
Yeah, so that cities
I
can...
just wanted to add a couple of points in responding to our friends here. What reminds me when we're just talking here is the first point about the shopping thing, that in a sense the city needs to tell a story. So it's about lots of people coming together to somehow tell this story that tells a story of the human being that lives there that is more than that and offers something of that story. And so that's just one point. The second point that I think is really interesting to me, at least, is that so often a vision, which is partly, let's call it an ambition or a vision, is often bound by the rules. You know, and I'm very interested in the rules because of my creative bureaucracy festival, and I keep on thinking, let's be strategically principled. We've got some big, interesting stories, like, let's say, have surprise or whatever might be one of the principles, but be tactically flexible, which means that it's more moving towards a yes-if culture rather than no-because. And if the city had this story, which had some of these elements, like yes-if culture rather than no-because, when Helen comes up and says, why don't you, have you ever considered, or Juan says, I know you never thought of this, however, people say yes-if. Yeah. And that's a cultural question. And
there's a very interesting answer to that. Well, the very first project Artichoke ever did was with the wonderful French company Royal de Luxe, where we invited the Sultan's elephant, this huge mechanical elephant, to walk the streets. So it took me 7 years to negotiate the permissions for that to happen, because the English are very good at going, I don't think so. What's it in aid of? And after about 4 years of being really irritated by these meetings where I was saying, please, may I do this? And they were saying, no, you may not. May I close London for 4 days? No, you may not. After 4 years, I did a really strange thing, which I give to you as a magic clue as to how to make things happen. I went to one of these meetings